Welcome back to the MovieBabble Podcast. I'm hosting this week. It's me, Brennan. I'm here with Nick. How's it going?
What's going on, man?
You know what? Not too much. Same old, same old. I mean, summer's starting to wind down, and we didn't really get a summer movie season. Kind of sad, but it is what it is. Colin is away this week, so I'll be hosting this episode, and we'll touch on a couple interesting things with the box office as we kind of start up here because while the United States is still sort of reeling with everything, and there isn't really a confirmed set date yet for when the U.S. is going to be opening up their theaters overall. I mean, we know that Tenet's going to be kind of the aim, but they don't have a. I mean, it's not fully concrete, right? It's a fluid situation, obviously, with the coronavirus down there. But up here in Canada, things are looking a little bit better, and theaters are opening. So I want to touch on that a little bit. So SpongeBob opened in Canada this past weekend to about 300 theaters, and it grossed about $900,000, which is not too shabby actually for 300 theaters. It opened up at one near me, and before I actually touch on theaters in Canada, I want to just throw it back to you. These are actually pretty good numbers overall.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many qualifiers now with what a release looks like. I feel like every studio head's like, hey, we made some kind of money, so this is good, I guess. But yeah, 900K off of 300 theaters, it's really not too bad for something like SpongeBob. And I feel like we're going to see a lot of these kind of releases now where, like, I feel like the world, like, we just can't wait for the US to get its shit together. So we need to, all these studios are really, they really need to make money off of these properties that they've been pushing back, and they've been remarketing and just hemorrhaging money because they've had to remarket and set new dates and everything like that. So it's SpongeBob and also Unhinged, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit further as well, are these two movies that just, they need to start pumping out box office receipts. And so, yeah, Canada is in a lot better shape than here in the United States. So it just makes sense that they would release there first. But yeah, it's not too bad, especially because drive-in theaters have been basically just all the talk in terms of going to theaters the last few months. So seeing theaters actually open, and it seems like everything is safe, as from what I've read and heard, it's not a bad start for SpongeBob.
No, for sure. And you know what? $900,000, 300 theaters, that's great. And then obviously Russell Crowe's Unhinged made about 582,000 in the same amount of theaters here in Canada over the weekend. The thing about SpongeBob, though, I think that will be a very successful on-demand release in the United States. Would you agree?
Oh, no doubt. This is Trolls World Tour possibilities here. Mm-hmm. And especially just because I know people our age who love memes. So basically us, like, SpongeBob has lived on, and there's a possibility there where older people will get it and buy this movie it's going to premium VOD first, and then I think it's going to CBS All Access after that. Yeah. But yeah, like, I think SpongeBob, this is the start of something pretty strong for this movie. Maybe strong in these days means something different than it meant in January, but yeah, I think this is really, I don't know if it's smart, but I feel like it's just the most necessary kind of distribution you can do at this point.
Yeah, and it's neat to just be able to go on to Box Office Mojo and see that SpongeBob made $900,000 this past weekend, and the per theater average of 3,000, as we were saying, it's not too bad at all, and it's also expected to open up in a few more theaters in Canada as the weeks progress. So the theaters near me, it's funny because they opened up early August. That's, I think, August 4th or 5th. And since then, they've just been playing. We spoke about this a few days ago, but they've just been playing movies like they played the Dark Knight trilogy, Jurassic Park, Pulp Fiction, Dirty Dancing, The Goonies, Harry Potter, all those sorts of things. And that's just, I'm not barely even scratching the surface. They play, I think Jaws was there as well. I said Harry Potter. Lord of the Rings was playing as well. A ton of stuff there. But now, finally, a 2020 movie is out, a new one. So I checked out today just what the theater looks like and what the kind of the availability looks like in the screens, and you have about 28 showings of SpongeBob today at the theater near my house.
Oh my god!
And I mean, this is a large theater. This is one of the biggest theaters in Canada, not in terms of capacity, but in terms of screens. There's 24 screens total, so it's quite a large theater. So it does make sense that they have 28 showings of SpongeBob. And then besides that, they still have Harry Potter playing. They have the Inception 10th anniversary, Lord of the Rings, and Jurassic Park, but they all are getting like 1-2 showings a day. Unhinged has about 18 showings, but nearly 30 showings for SpongeBob.
So do you know what the kind of like what these theaters are doing in terms of keeping people apart or anything like that? Like what's the capacity? Do you know that?
Yeah, so where I'm at, we have the government mandated at 50 per theater. Now, when they announced that, or it's 50 per indoor gathering, 100 for outdoor. So when they announced that, the theater chains were hesitant to say we're opening because they can't run off 50 people. So they were able to get a little bit of special treatment, and now it's 50 per theater instead of 50 per overall location. So each of these screens can have 50 people max rather than the entire complex having 50. So I pulled up what it would look like for me to buy a ticket online, and half the seats in every theater are wiped out. So it's essentially two people sitting at a spot, then the two beside that are kind of empty. No one can buy that. Then two and two and two and two. But the IMAX theater, which sits several hundred seats, it's actually two you can purchase, and then four empty in between. So it's quite well distanced, and also you have to wear a mask until you get to the theater, which I don't know if that defeats the purpose of anything, but you have to wear it when you enter, when you buy your ticket, when you walk down the halls. But when you go into the theater, if you have food or something, they say obviously you can take it off. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with those precautions.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with what theaters are going to do from here because there was just a report the other day where AMC is like, "Hey, we're opening again." And this is forget that big release that we did back in July when we thought Tenet was going to come out on its release date, but we're opening now, and obviously they're doing that in preparation for when Tenet actually comes here to the States when it's scheduled to come in. I think September 3rd is the U.S. release of that. But I don't know. Like I feel like AMC, it's so interesting to kind of see how theaters are tracking the whole Tenet situation, and we've been tracking it ourselves for I don't know, it feels like years at this point on this podcast. But it's so fascinating when they're stuck to this date where Tenet, Warner Brothers, Christopher Nolan, are like, hey, we're going to come out September 3rd, so now theaters kind of have to get their shit together and figure out what they're going to do. But it's just so interesting to see what Canada is doing. I just don't see that here in the U.S. when cases are still on the rise, and who knows, we're even supposed to have this second wave, whatever that happens in the fall here. So who really knows? But I feel like at this point, when I hear all this news about theaters, in terms of where I am here in DC, big metropolitan area, until I am in a theater sitting down watching the movies, I won't believe that they're going to open. I just don't see it at this point.
Yeah, very funny. Yeah, so where I am, I think I did speak about it in the recent weeks. It's closer to Toronto, so our theaters opened a little bit later than the rest of the province or state. But now that they are open, I do like these precautions. Now, I'm not planning to rush back to the theater yet. I'm going to keep my eyes open for Tenet. I think that's when I'll probably go, and I'll probably aim for the IMAX just so that I can have four empty seats in between me and who I bring instead of two. I think that would be comfortable and a good time. And I know also the theaters have, I don't know if you've seen this before, but these big things where you can spray like disinfectants in the theater. And I know people have worries about that, but that there are a lot of them that are not too bad for human beings. I know they're very popular in some countries that they actually clean the streets with them. But I think that's something that some theaters are looking at as well.
Yeah, and just looking back at like the distributors and all this, I feel so bad for Solstice Studios, which is the distributor behind Unhinged. So this is their first movie. I think they were incorporated or they started back in 2018. So this is just awful timing for them. So Unhinged was like, I think it's about a $33 million budget. So mid-budget movie, and they have to recoup some of that. Obviously, this isn't Blumhouse budgets we're talking about. And down the pipe, they have a Ben Affleck movie directed by Robert Rodriguez, which I think was supposed to start production back in April, and then everything happened. So who knows what that happens, but we're in the situation now where this is a new firm, and I'm sure they have investment funds that are kind of keeping them afloat for now, but they got to start making money off of this movie. And they had Russell Crowe come in for this. They were really hoping that this would be somewhat of a hit, or at least they could kind of market it well with such a star, and who knows. But I feel so bad for them because they're in this tough situation where it's like, oh, we kind of need to make money to survive, but also what are the ethics of releasing our movie when cases are still on the rise in certain parts of the world? It is so tricky, and I really just feel bad for all the decision makers in this because I don't really know if there's a correct decision in it.
No, I agree. It's a very tough situation overall, and we will see what happens. But I don't know if I'd feel confident fully, but I do feel probably the most confident about this upcoming Tenet release for the U.S. than I have about previous ones. Maybe that's just wishful thinking, or maybe that's just because I know it's going to be here. But I don't know. I feel like we might see a tough spike in the fall with little kids going back to school and stuff like that. And I was thinking this slot for the Tenet release is perfect because it'll be before that flare up, but who knows?
Yeah, it is interesting because all around the States, there are people that are moving back into school. And I went to William and Mary down in Virginia, and you see on Instagram, and there's pictures of people moving in with masks on, and it's just so weird just to see that happening, that they're actually going back to school. But yeah, it does seem like Warner Brothers is a little more defiant about this time around. We're like, no, we are releasing. This is going to happen, because they've made reports where like, hey, like even if San Francisco, LA, New York, Chicago, all these big cities that are normally really good for the movie industry, even if they're not open, we are still going to figure out a way to release this movie. So it's really, really tricky, and I feel like we've been saying this for so long. Where I don't know, like I think this is all just so tough, and I'm just happy that we're here talking about it instead of sitting in these meetings, or I guess sitting in front of a camera on Zoom, I guess is how they're making these decisions now. But I'm happy that we're here talking about it instead of having to figure this out, because it is so tricky on all fronts, and there's so many connected. It's such a big web of people who are connected to this, and so many different jobs, even just in movie theaters and all that. It's really, really tough.
No, for sure it is, and you're right when you say it like that. I'm much happier sitting where we are than than in the spots of the decision makers.
Yeah, we can just be assholes here with our microphones, just saying whatever, and then let them make all the hard stuff.
Exactly. So we'll transition away from that little bit of a box office report. Glad that we do get to see Sponge on the Run almost made $1 million. That's pretty big. So we'll move into the Netflix top 10. So we will start off at number 1 here. Project Power, The Lost Husband at 2, Mr. Peabody and Sherman at 3. Work It at 4, a lot of Netflix originals here. Dennis the Menace at 5, Jurassic Park at 6, and Easy Girl at 7. Despicable Me returns. It is at number 8. We Summon the Darkness at 9, and Mr. Deeds is at 10. Let's run back to the top. I know you wanted to touch on Project Power a little bit.
Yeah, so this is Netflix's big release of the week, and it's a really interesting premise. So this movie takes place in New Orleans, and there's a creation of this power drug, and basically, if you take it, it gives you superpowers for 5 minutes, and depending on who you are, your superpower could be different. So there's some people who become indestructible, some people just light on fire, and there's just some people who it just automatically kills them and they explode instantly. And this movie is R-rated, so it's kind of grisly in that sense, but really interesting premise. You kind of have like a little X-Men / Limitless / like just grisly crime police drama in there. So it stars Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, which is really interesting because I feel like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's just been gone for a while, and he was in that 7500 movie, which came out on Amazon Prime a few weeks ago. But this is just a really strange choice for him because he seems like a guy who really wants to be involved and do all these really interesting things. And this is kind of the most down the middle movie you could ever expect. Like, this is just like mass entertainment. Let's try to be a 4-quadrant thing kind of movie. It's tough because I wouldn't really say I wouldn't recommend this movie, but I'm also not angry at it. I am very just whatever towards this movie. It's totally down the middle. There's the plot with Jamie Foxx's character, who's tortured past, and you know exactly where that's headed. So yeah, it's kind of a hard movie to talk about other than the premise itself, because I don't really think it does anything super interesting with it. And you kind of see, as soon as like you're like an hour into this movie, you know exactly where it's headed, and you're just waiting for the movie to end and get there. But it is doing really good for Netflix, and it seems like it's number one this week on their top 10. So obviously a lot of people are watching it. But it's one of those. There's a lot of these Netflix original movies that they release where they feel kind of half baked. They don't really feel like maybe they're not completed all the way. Where some of the CGI in this movie is just really, really bad. Like, we're talking like 2005 level CGI is just not very good. So it feels like sometimes they release these movies and they're just like totally rushed and slapped together. And this kind of feels like one of those. But I could see where people could just like watch this in the background as they're doing laundry. I feel like that's kind of the base for a lot of Netflix movies now, where it's like, can I put this on in the background while I'm doing something else? All right, it passes. I think that's kind of what Project Power is in a nutshell.
Yeah, you know what? This is a movie that I did know about this, but in the recent weeks, I just forgot it was coming. It's great to see Joseph Gordon-Levitt in things. As you said, he was in that other film earlier this year. I actually liked that movie, the 7500 movie.
I do too. I thought it was really effective for what it was. I can't really say it stuck with me, but I do like it. I would recommend it.
Yeah, no, that was a solid one. Now we transition on to number 2 on the list this week, which is The Lost Husband. I know you also wanted to touch a little bit on that, and we'll talk a little bit about our boy Josh.
I am so confused by this movie. So there's this thing that we've seen on Netflix for a while now, where it's like, why is this random movie in the top 10? Like, we had that 3022 movie that I keep going back to with Omar Epps, I think it was, which is just like, what is this movie? Or you have Code 8 was another one, and there's another strain of this where it's a Josh Duhamel rom-com movie that makes it into the top 10. So I think Life as We Know It was that movie with Katherine Heigl, was really big for a while. I don't get it, because it seems like there's a large contingent, a silent majority, if you will, of people out there who really love Josh Duhamel and his movies, and I don't really get it. Because I watched this movie. So this movie stars Leslie Bibb and Josh Duhamel, and it's all about Leslie Bibb's her life. Basically, her life is falling apart, and she goes to this farm that her aunt runs, and Josh Duhamel is the farmhand, and he's running the show and showing her how to do that, and simultaneously she's trying to get her life on track, and it's just a lot of white person goes to the country to find herself kind of thing. Super cozy, meant for people to get the nice warm fuzzy feeling in them, and I just couldn't take it because it was just so down the middle. And but it's so fascinating to see some of these just strange Josh Duhamel movies just pop up over and over again. I want to do more research on this, but I'm kind of afraid to, because it's such a weird concept. But there's something about him and his movies that resonate really, really strongly.
Yeah, no, it's odd. I mean, I don't think I put the Transformers he was into that category, but
oh, that's right, he was in that. I totally forgot.
No, you're right. It's odd. Like, you like, I can't really name too many movies he's in, but I always can picture him in a movie every now and then, and he always just kind of pops back into the arena of things.
Yeah, he's been in kind of like that VOD hell for a couple years. I don't know what that means, but then Lost Husband was another one of those where it released earlier this year, and then this happens time to time from Netflix movies where it's a smaller movie that Netflix buys the streaming rights to, so it just plops on there. So yeah, I think this movie came out in April, and we're also seeing it with another one in the top 10, We Saw in the Darkness, which I think came out in March or sometime earlier this year. But it's the same kind of deal where it's Netflix just finds these movies and says, "Hey, we'll take them, we'll add them here." So it's very, very bizarre how they can create a second life for these kind of movies. And yeah, I'm kind of the same thing where I don't think I've seen a lot of Josh Duhamel movies because he's in a lot of movies that I'm just not really interested in, like New Year's Eve or like Transformers or just these other things. But I think he was in movie 43 too, which is just very strange to me. But yeah, he must just be like the manly man kind of guy that women seem to really care for. I mean, I feel like that's too broad of a brush to paint here, but yeah, he's just kind of like this guy that people like, and I don't know what it is, but who knows? He's just a tall, good-looking dude. He's good across from other people in movies. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean he's someone that I think we'll always see him kind of bouncing around here and there. So that's The Lost Husband. We won't touch on it, but big shout out to another Sandler movie jumping in, Mr. Deeds at number 10.
I loved this movie when I was 12. And I think that speaks to just all Adam Sandler movies.
I'll be honest, I don't think this is one that I've seen.
I like this movie. I would check it out. If you're 12, if you're a 12-year-old boy, you're bored, and you're on Netflix, you can watch it. And you'll probably really, really like it.
Good to know. I mean, we're I don't know if that's our audience, but we'll hopefully
maybe it are. You don't know.
Could be.
I look at the website stats every day, and it's all just 12-year-old boys reading my reviews of these really esoteric indie movies. It's all them. That's our base.
You're enlightening them.
Who knows?
So that's the Netflix top 10 this week. Not too many holdovers from last week besides Jurassic Park and a few others, but that is that. We'll move on now to a recent release that is pretty popular right now. It's trending. I know on Letterboxd it was trending. It's not out here in Canada right now, but that is Boy State. Firstly, where did you watch this?
So this is interesting because this is through Apple TV Plus. It's A24. I think it's A24 produced, or they picked it up, and they partnered with Apple. I'm not quite sure what the business is on there, but I know that A24 has had some kind of deal with Apple to show some of their films. So maybe this is the first wave of that. I don't really know, but it is on Apple TV Plus. I guess here just in the States, since you haven't been able to watch it, but really interesting movie. So this movie played at Sundance earlier this year. I didn't get a chance to see it there, but I think it won the Audience Award, or it won the Best Documentary. It won one of those awards there. But it's really, really fascinating. And I feel like it's kind of this moment in a lot of different ways. So it follows the boys state in Texas. So I guess for people who don't know, it just basically the boys state, and there's a girl state as well, which is really interesting because they keep them apart in 2020. But that's another discussion to have entirely. But so these there's like thousands of boys that are brought together for this boys state, and they get together for a week and build a representative government from the ground up, and they can bring up all of these ideas and bills. I think there's a funny part for the year before in Texas where all the boys came together and voted to secede from the United States, which is really funny. This documentary is kind of a fly in the wall verite style. It follows a few of the kids who are big players in kind of the machinations of this week at Boys State. So there's one kid who is the kid of Mexican immigrants here in the United States, and there's another kid who appears to be gung-ho. I love Trump's America, I love guns kind of thing. We follow him as well. And there's one kid and another kid who's kind of playing in the weeds a little bit. He's kind of propping up one of the candidates and working for him behind the scenes, and a lot of his machinations are really fascinating. But so yeah, this is a movie kind of just, I think it's meant to act as a microcosm of politics in 2020, and I don't think that's necessarily accurate because this movie is about a bunch of 17-year-old boys in Texas. So I don't really think that necessarily works as kind of a simple idea. But I think it does show a lot of really interesting ideas about what politics have become and what you need to do to succeed in politics. So there's the one kid who is really into like Trump, and he says he's very pro-life and all this stuff. He's up on the stage just yelling and going, "Yeah, like go America!" And you realize that he's actually pro-choice and he's actually very liberal. And it's really interesting because he's discussing how he needs to show this kind of created persona in order to succeed. And I think there's definitely a lot of truth to that, and just in modern politics and how people have to do whatever they can to get votes from people they don't necessarily believe in, and how it's more about showing a face rather than displaying a lot of your ideals. And I think there's something really interesting in that.
Yeah. So I would guess that they're all so that kid there that you're talking about up on stage shouting all that. You're saying that that's kind of the persona that he was portraying during the mock government.
Yeah. So it's really funny, and I don't. And this you see him like the first 40 minutes of it. He's like, I just want to go to West Point and love my country. And it's just like, oh my God, like this kid is so much. And then there's an interview later on where he's like, yeah, I'm pretty liberal actually. Like I am pro-choice. I am all these different things. But I know that I won't be able to succeed here if I don't show this kind of personality that I've created. So it's really, really fascinating in that sense. And then you have the other kid who's kind of like the idealist, who's from immigrant parents, where he's going around, and there's a big part of this where if you want to run for governor in Boise State, you have to get 30 signatures from other kids. And the other guy who's like rah rah and all this stuff, he's just like running around and like throwing his paper at people and telling them to sign it. And then this other kid is going around, he's like, I don't want your signature unless you believe in what I stand for. So he's having all these really responsible conversations that frankly I don't know if I can have. Like he's just well beyond his years in that sense, and he's 17 and I'm 24. It's like, holy shit, what am I doing with my life? But he's talking to all these people, and he's like, this is why I believe in, and there's actually like some nuance in there, which I thought was really fascinating. So it pits him. He's one of the big leaders of this week, and he plays a big role in it. And it's just really, really fascinating because I talked about the other kid who's kind of playing behind the scenes and pulling the strings a little more. And they start running a smear campaign and going scorched earth on all these kids to just kind of just destroy their public persona. And it's like, wow, like we resorted to this in like 2 days. So it is really, really fascinating. But also I think it is worth knowing that, hey, these are 17-year-old boys. So I don't know how much we can take from this, but there's a lot of interesting stuff to take from it.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time. I think I'll try to hunt that down as soon as possible. But that is interesting, and it sounds like a lot of fun too. And just quickly going back, that seceding part from the U.S. That's a big Texas moment right there.
It is really funny because this movie, I think it's the year after. I think this was the 2018 Boise State in Texas. This is filmed. I think the 2017 one was when they seceded. And so all these people are like, this is all for nothing if we just vote to succeed. And there is a contingent. These are 17-year-old boys. Like they just want to like be ridiculous, right? Like we know that very well. Where a lot of them were like they want to impeach the speaker and all this stuff. But then there is something I think really responsible where it's like, well, this is basically for nothing if we vote to secede. Like, what are we doing here? What are we standing for? So I thought that was actually really fascinating as well, because they don't want to follow in that same mode as the people that came before them. So I think there's a lot of interesting discussions to have from this movie. I think it's a good it's simultaneously a good encapsulation of what politics is, and also it isn't because of kind of like the qualifiers that I said. And it would also be really interesting to see like a sequel or something like a girl's state, because that's just like off, like that's just not mentioned in this movie. And I think Brian Connor, who wrote the review for our site, pointed this out, where it would be amazing to be able to see just like, I don't know, like a people state. Like you have boys and girls come together, and it'd be, I think, more of a microcosm of what this movie is searching for in terms of its themes. But yeah, I think it's really powerful, and I think it does say a lot, even though there are these things that I have issues with. But I really liked it.
Yeah, no, it does sound pretty interesting, and I will do my best to find that at some point. But yeah, it sounds like a good time, and you're right. It would be great to see a sequel. Get like a different, obviously get just a completely different kind of demographic in the room, and it'll probably change big time.
Yeah, I would love to see it. Like you take, like, this is probably the most conservative you can get with this. I would love to see this like take place in like Vermont somewhere, or just like somewhere totally different that has totally different belief systems. I think that would be really fascinating. You can have this sort of running kind of like a, what's like a 7-Up kind of documentary series where we follow these people year after year or something like that, or just like a different kind of series of documentaries. I think there is something like, I think there would be something really interesting in doing that instead of just sticking with Boys State. But who knows? Maybe once this gets out there, people are like get more performative when they know that cameras are following them. I don't really know. They are 17-year-old boys. I want to keep stressing that. So who knows? But I think there is something. I really hope that happens. I would love to see that.
Yeah, no, for sure. That does sound like it's definitely an interesting idea and something that should be looked into, especially if this is successful enough.
Yeah, and it seems like it is striking chord. I think this is a really big get for Apple TV Plus. I mean, we've talked before about how they don't have the biggest library, so it's a matter of, can you just like download Apple TV Plus for a week and pay the $6 to rent a movie? And I think at this point, I think that's a really viable option. But yeah, I think this is one of the more interesting documentaries I've seen this year. I think I've seen better documentaries, but I think I come out of this movie with a lot to discuss, and I wanted to discuss it with other people. So I think that's, in some ways, that's the calling cards of a really good movie. So I would recommend this to anyone.
For sure, and it's good for them. They need to diversify that library they have. So that's good. So we'll move away from that and just kind of touch on what we have been watching in the last little while. If you want, you can start it off. Actually, you talked a lot there, so I'm going to jump in here, give you a little bit of a break.
I'm exhausted. Please take over.
Grab some water or something, sit back. So one film I watched a couple days ago, it was completely bonkers, Vivarium, and it came out in 2019, stars Jesse Eisenberg, directed by Lorcan Finnegan. I don't know if it's Lorcan or Lorcan, but that is what it is. Just know it's Mr. Finnegan, starring Jesse Eisenberg, and it's just like a really interesting movie. I didn't really know how I felt about it till the next day, really. I knew I was pretty entranced by it, but I didn't know if it was good or bad. I've kind of settled on that it's fine. Like it's an interesting movie with an interesting concept, but for me, there wasn't enough payoff. However, it is worth a watch just for how weird it is and bonkers it is. So you have this couple, and they're looking for a nice place to live in the suburbs, and they go to this city and the suburban area, and it's just every house is the same, and it's like they're trapped, right? And you have this guy who tried to sell them a house, and he's an odd dude. Like he's repeating the things that they're saying in a weird tone, and you can tell there's something off about him. He's making these weird faces at them, and they're like, "Yeah, we should leave." So they hop in their car to leave, and they're driving, and they don't know. And as they're driving, they're essentially going in circles. They don't know what's going on, and they're essentially stuck there, and they live there. But the weirdest part is, and this isn't a spoiler because this is what the movie is based on, or what it's kind of centered around, is they decide to, they're stuck, so they go into one of the houses, they sit down, and in the morning there's a baby, and every day that baby's aging like a few weeks at a time, and it's really creepy.
My God.
It's really creepy. It starts like throughout the film, it's like the size of a 5-year-old, and it's talking like a 15-year-old, and it's just a creepy, creepy, weird thing. And there's something off with it too, and you can just tell, and it's driving the couple a little bit crazy. But it's an interesting watch, and that's pretty much the premise of the film overall. But I would give it a watch if you want to see something that you've never seen before.
That's interesting because I have heard some people like maybe don't spoil it, but they get to the ending of this movie and they're like, "What the hell just happened? Like, does it stick the landing? Is it worth it?"
Yeah, that's what I was saying. For me, I don't think I don't think there was enough payoff overall. Like I do feel that the film was good. It was interesting, but I don't feel like the ending had enough payoff. Now it stuck the landing. I don't know. I don't really know if they knew what they wanted to do with this movie. That I guess that may be some of the gripes people have with the ending, because you can essentially not watch the ending, and I feel like you don't really leave with that much different than what you would have if you see it. It was all right though.
Interesting. Yeah, it's something I think I have been meaning to check out because I think it's on Prime for free right now, right? Where you can just watch that. So it's been something that I've been meaning to check out, but that's creepy. That baby, that doesn't sound good to me.
No,
Maybe I won't watch it.
Yeah. That's respectable, but it's rather bonkers.
Interesting. So yeah, what I've been spending my time actually just watching a lot of different stuff, but the one I really wanted to touch on was I finally watched Bicycle Thieves. It was kind of one of the biggest holes in my movie knowledge. I, for whatever reason, just hadn't seen it. Hadn't seen it when I took a few film classes in college, but finally got around to it on Criterion. And it's one of those movies where you watch it and you immediately like there's a bunch of different holes of film history that start to make sense, where you just see like all of these different things just came from this specific movie. This movie is just so good, and it's not really like me coming in 70 plus years later being like, hey, have you guys heard of this movie called Bicycle Thieves? It's pretty good. But yeah, like this movie is just terrific. Everything you've heard about it, if you haven't seen it, it's just so wonderful. But yeah, it takes this just really basic premise of this guy from the working class, just he finally gets a job and he needs a bicycle for it. And as soon as he's out, he's putting up posters in the neighborhood, and then as soon as he starts working, it gets stolen from him. So the rest of the movie is just a race to get his bike back, because that bike is just his livelihood. And it's just such a really smart and understated look at just how, for people in the working class, they have no safety net, and just not even, I mean, I've had a bike stolen before. You don't lock it up and kind of things like that. But it just shows how it's just everything just means so much more, and these little things just add up. And yeah, this dude just can't work anymore, and it's just so sad to see him go through this pit of despair, and he just can't like provide for his family. It's just a terrific movie. I also think it's one of those classic world cinema movies. I think is a really good place to start for people who haven't watched a lot of world cinema, especially classic cinema, because it's straightforward, and it's not esoteric or super like surrealist or anything like that. It's just really terrific and so well done, and you kind of see where just like every movie kind of comes from this in a lot of sense. Like everything about the working class really does take a huge debt to Bicycle Thieves. It's just so terrific.
So I see here it was about 90 minutes too. Came out in 1948, and it does it take place in that time too?
Yeah, it does. It takes place in after World War II, so definitely right around that time. But it doesn't make a huge kind of point to like, hey, this is when this movie takes place. It's just more of kind of just following this character and his son. His son's Bruno, played by Enzo. I don't even know how to say his last name. Stiola, I think is how you say it. But just like one of the best kid performances I've ever seen. Like, I'm sure that's not breaking new ground either, because then this movie's just been talked to death. But then he's just so good in this movie, and just the way he emotes is just, oh my god, it's brilliant. But Yeah, it's just kind of a day in the life of this person, kind of trying to find his bike, and it could be. I'm not quite sure of the timeline in this. I mean, maybe it takes place over 2 days or 3 days, but you could say this is also like one of the best all-in-one-day movies as well,
Hmm.
because it's really just him. Like if he doesn't find his bike immediately, like it's going to be gone for forever. So it's just him in that race, and they take their breaks and go into a store and see the wealthy just enjoying themselves, and it's just, oh my god, I love this movie so much. It's terrific.
Yeah, and you know what? That's just kind of another Criterion promotion from MovieBabble.
Yeah, are they gonna start paying me or what? Because I come on here every single time and say how great they are. Like they need to drop the bag and just give me money.
We have to start getting some funding from them.
Yeah, Criterion, come at me. At least give me like a like free profile or something. Like
Yeah,
I don't know. Just give me stuff. Give me all your
something like
Criterion
that.
DVDs.
Yeah, I mean DVD here and there, 50%
Exactly.
off
Yeah, it
here and
wouldn't
there.
hurt. Throw stuff in my mailbox from time to time. I wouldn't be
Yeah,
angry.
I hope they're listening, and if they are, you
I'm sure
deserve
they
that.
are. I'm sure they are listening. They listen every week.
But with that, though, we will wrap it up. Next week we'll be back, and we'll be 1 week closer to the potential release of Tenet in the United States. We're still holding our breath, hoping that it's actually good, because if it is awful, it will be absolutely devastating.
There would be some kind of poetic justice in that, I feel like. There's something highly ironic about that.
uh,
But like I said, I won't believe it until I'm sitting in a theater seeing it. So
right.
don't catch me holding my breath over here.
No, that's fair. But as always, you can check us out. Check out all our content on our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and everything else at moviebabble.com.